Not only do I think this is the worst LEGO Star Wars set of 2025, I also think it's one of the dumbest releases they've ever done. This is the 40771 TIE Fighter with Imperial Hanger Rack. It has 236 pieces, and LEGO values it at $35, which I think is already insane. But this is one of those sets you couldn't just buy, as it was only a gift with purchase available when you bought the UCS Death Star during the first week of its release. And normally I don't have much of an issue with that. Limited time GWPs are common with LEGO, and there are definitely a lot of them that I absolutely love from the history of LEGO Star Wars. This is definitely not one of them. What sets it apart to me, though, isn't how bad the TIE Fighter looks, it's that they made this to combine with set 75419, proudly advertised on the box here. And the problem I have with that is if you didn't buy the Death Star during the first week of its release, the most expensive LEGO Star Wars set ever will forever now come as an incomplete package to new buyers. And I think that is a ridiculous concept. And that's not to say LEGO hasn't done anything like this before. They did it with Gringotts for Harry Potter, but it's certainly new to LEGO Star Wars, and I don't like it. Don't do this. At least certainly not like this. Anyway, I think I've set the stage for why I think this is such a bad GWP. Cutting open this box, we're going to find out if it's really as bad as it seems. You're going to find a few numbered bags here, instruction manual, normal stuff. For the minifigs, we have a TIE Pilot and a couple of Stormtroopers, and as boring as that selection may seem, it's definitely what we needed here. Of course, the TIE Pilot to pilot your TIE Fighter, although the TIE Pilot, I would say, is very lacking for a GWP for a $1,000 set, as it doesn't receive any arm printing. We got arm printing in the $230 UCS TIE Interceptor. Why we couldn't see it on this figure in this set is a little bit beyond me, but of course I'm sure they had to prioritize something. I don't know what that could have been in this particular set, but I'm sure that'd be the excuse if we were to ask the designer, so we'll leave it there. The pilot himself otherwise is very nice. Again, it's just not up to the quality that you would expect for something you're getting when you're spending $1,000. Next with our pair of Stormtroopers, kind of the same deal as what I said in my Death Star review. If you like the newer Stormtrooper design, you're going to like these. If you don't, you won't. And when it comes to getting 2 extra Stormtroopers here, I think that's big. I think it really helps complete your UCS Death Star, as one of my big complaints in the review was that they didn't include enough Stormtroopers, so getting a couple more with this set definitely goes a long way in my opinion. But since the first 7 days of the Death Star's release has passed, well, yeah, you won't be getting that complete Death Star experience with the couple of extra Stormtroopers you should. And I guess in case anyone was wondering, because I know people always take their helmets off Stormtroopers when they put them on display, the heads underneath these are exactly the same as 3 that we saw on the Death Star. The side build in this is the maintenance cart. I think it's a nice little build. You've got a printed 1x2 tile on the top as a control panel. You've got a couple of studs for a Stormtrooper to sit on. We'll remove his weapon first. There we go. Place him in there. Really simple to do. Looks nice. I did think the couple of open holes at the back would be better for the weapon, and technically you can place the weapon in here, but in either case, it can fall right out if you flip it over. Not that that's something you're going to be doing, but yeah, the weapon storage just isn't what I thought it would be for that particular part. Then you've got a couple of red canisters, the yellow canister, and a couple of crates. The crates have a really nice Imperial print on them. We've seen this particular piece before, but it's still a very cool one. And as is, I would kind of say standard at this point, we get the thermal detonator inside of each crate. Both a couple of nice printed pieces, just extra inclusions, I'd say, even though they're going to be hidden away most of the time. Now, this cart fits pretty nicely in the hangar of the Death Star, as long as you don't have a bunch of figures populating it otherwise. It's definitely a nice addition, but if you do have a bunch of figures in there, yeah, it gets a bit tight. Now, the TIE Fighter build, I think, is undeniably brutal looking. It starts with the proportions of this thing. The cockpit is way too big for the wings, or vice versa. The wings are way too small for the cockpit. I mean, this is just huge compared to what it should be, and I think that throws off the entire look of the build from the get-go. And honestly, it might be the worst part about the build. Like, the rest of it, like the idea that the wings have some of the design work there is really nice. And I'd say the way this looks is certainly an improvement over what many people compare this set to in the 4+ TIE Fighter from 2019. The rest of it maybe not as much to me. That being said, this is obviously much smaller than that model, but this also has to fit in the Death Star specifically, so it was made with that parameter, which makes sense to me. But yeah, this thing I think is pretty horrendous looking regardless. Like, yeah, there are some nice attributes like the design work on the side of the wings, but when you look at it front on, the proportions and like just the blockiness staring at it, I definitely hate. You'll also notice the windscreen on this. While it's the nice printed windscreen, which honestly I'm surprised they didn't have to prioritize something and get rid of that. You can't actually see through into the cockpit, which might be the first time ever on a TIE Fighter with minifigs that you can't. Maybe one of the Darth Vader's TIEs in this scale had that same issue, but certainly for an actual TIE Fighter, it's the first time I can remember not being able to actually see clean into the cockpit when there's a minifig there. And so to actually get your minifig inside, you just have to pull this panel off the front. There's the interior. I don't know whether to say it's better or worse looking than I would have expected. There's certainly no control panels or anything there, which is maybe something you would have liked to see, right? But yeah, nothing there. There's also no studs for your minifig to attach to, so I'm curious to see if the pilot is just going to shake around in there. Really only one way to find out. We'll slide him in there, and actually it's a pretty snug fit. That is a crazy snug fit. I don't know. I'm kind of, yeah, there's not a lot of space for him to shake around. Oh my God. What? Is it that bad? There's no way it's that bad. Oh my goodness. And I thought the clone turbo tank over the summer seemed like a pretty rough build as far as stability went, but this might take the cake. There's no way. So usually with modern day TIE fighters, I'm very used to being able to just grab the wing and fly it around. I don't think it's going to happen here. Not that you really should. You should just grab by the cockpit. It's small enough where it doesn't really matter that you should have to grab this and be fine, and it'll shake around just fine. I would say they have gotten very good at making sturdy TIE fighters, but at this scale, I suppose you shouldn't expect it. But I was not ready for the wow. Like, I guess the Technic connection is here, but it is not the one doing the heavy lifting. My goodness, that was not expected at all. I don't know whether to, really go hard on that or not because of what this set is supposed to be for and, the fact that it's really more of a display piece, even though it looks horrendous for display. Let's be honest with that. But, yeah, does it matter? Oh man. Oh, it takes nothing but a little shake. Technically, if you want to look at the box, it says this for ages 10 and up, which would imply it's at least in some way supposed to be some sort of play set, even though it's only available with the purchase of an 18 plus set. Very odd there too, as I kind of look back on that. Why would this be 10 plus if you can only get it with an 18 plus set? That makes no sense anyway. So very, very odd. This thing seems to fall apart in my hands much more easily than the clone turbo tank from this summer. Okay, well, yeah. Maybe Lego Star Wars is falling apart both figuratively and literally now these days. I guess you can recreate a crashed TIE fighter. That would look kind of cool. Ah, the backside comes right off. Yeah, that is tough. So it looks bad. It falls apart pretty easily if you grab it the wrong way, which I would say, honestly though, with a model this small, you would think you could grab it by the wing because the rest of the build just wouldn't be that heavy that it would fall apart. I think it would be less reasonable to expect a bigger build to withstand a hold like that. Like the UCS model, for example, if you grab like this, I would expect it to fall apart like that, right? But this small of a model, usually because it's so small, it ends up being more sturdy. And that is definitely the opposite here. That is really, really bad. And it looks bad anyway. So, yeah, just tough here. This is not what I expected. So we've also got the hanger rack here. It's the other part of the title of the set. A couple of red lights on it, little grill pieces, some wiring, which I actually think is nice. Adds a nice bit of detail that you definitely need there. Otherwise, it's a very, very static looking build. But you'll find some Technic pins on this, and that is going to line up somewhere within the Death Star. So let's check that out. You'll find the receiving end hidden in the top of the hanger, and you'll just connect it on in. Now, for the rare occasion when you just have the hanger rack in there with no TIE fighter, I think it's not a horrible look. It definitely has the feel of the interior of the Death Star down, and it doesn't stand out to me as something that doesn't belong. So that's nice. And then placing the TIE fighter onto the actual hanger rack is a fairly simple process. You will notice also these can move a bit, and so even if they're out of place when you drop the TIE fighter down, they will reform back to where they are supposed to be. I suppose that also means you can move them really far out of the way when the TIE fighter is gone if you want, so that's also another great option with that. But yeah, just place it down, it will form to the TIE fighter, and that works great. So definitely some positive attributes there. But yeah, the TIE fighter I think looks kind of nice in there. It definitely takes up a good bit of the airspace in here and makes the hangar feel more cramped. The benefit I would say to not having the TIE fighter with hanger rack here is that it does feel much more accurate to what we actually see in the movie, where the shuttle is off to one side and it's kind of empty. And so I can see people actually wanting to keep that feel and not even put the TIE fighter with hanger rack inside of here. And also it doesn't help that the TIE fighter looks absolutely atrocious. The shuttle, on the other hand, is absolutely beautiful. So it's kind of nasty to put the TIE fighter next to the shuttle like that, in my opinion, but that's neither here nor there. If you're down for it, you can put it here. Alternatively, if you wanted to place the TIE fighter on the ground in the hangar, you could do that. I also don't think this is a great option, as it just takes up floor space, which is ultimately going to be limited here for your minifigs for display. So I wouldn't do this, but you can do it. And then for the curious out there, I wanted to show this tie next to the Vader's tie from the 2016 UCS Death Star, and it definitely feels like a fairly good scale, although again, the cockpit is where I think you see they got so much bigger on the newer TIE fighter compared to the Vader's tie, and it just throws off everything. But yeah, these two don't scale horribly together. I think this TIE fighter with Imperial hanger rack is both a poorly designed, bad looking TIE fighter and a really bad concept for a GWP, as you now have an incomplete $1,000 set when you buy it at any point here on out. out. It really may be one of the dumbest all-time LEGO Star Wars decisions, and there's a lot of good stuff competing for that title out there. So that's it for this review. I think it's a pretty bad GWP. I got it pinned as the worst set of LEGO Star Wars for 2025 in my worst to first video, and I, after having reviewed it here, don't feel much different. It is still pretty brutal. Nice maintenance cart though. Let me know your thoughts on this one down in the comment section below. If you enjoyed, leave a like, and you can check out more LEGO Star Wars 2025 set reviews on the end screen now.